Lesson 7.1, Ratios, Rates, Tables, and Graphs. We're on page 173. The first activity is an Explore activity. So I want you to try the problems on this page to the best of your ability, and then only resume the video when you're ready to either get some hints or check your answers. So the directions for the Explore activity. Students in Mr. Webster's science class are doing an experiment that requires 250 milliliters, or mils, of distilled water for every 5 milliliters of ammonia. The table shows the amount of distilled water needed for various amounts of ammonia. So if you notice on the table, the top row is the ammonia and the bottom row is the distilled water. And there's some missing terms there, but we can figure those out. Question A reads, use the numbers in the first column of the table to write a ratio of distilled water to ammonia. So if you look at the numbers in the first column, they're 2 and 100, and you might be tempted to write 2 over 100 or 2 colon 100, but it does ask for distilled water first and ammonia second. So the distilled water is 100 and the ammonia is 2, so 100 to 2 would be the best answer here. Question B reads, how much distilled water is used for 1 milliliter of ammonia? Write your answer. Use your answer to write another ratio of distilled water to ammonia. So what they're asking you to do is basically find the unit rate. Instead of in the first column figuring out 100 mils for 2 mils of ammonia, trying to figure out 1 mil of ammonia. So if you divide both of these terms by 2, you would get 50 and 1. So for B, the correct answer is 50. And you should put the label there, 50 mils. The correct way to write the label is small m, capital L. And then it says use your answer to write another ratio of distilled water to ammonia. You could write 50 to 1 here. And you could write it using a colon, or you could write it using a fraction, 50 over 1. Doesn't really matter. They're the same thing. All right, let's move on. Question C says, the ratios in A and B are equivalent or not equivalent? Well, the ratios are 100 to 2 and then 50 to 1, and those are equivalent. And question D reads, how can you use your answer to B to find the amount of distilled water to add to a given amount of ammonia? Well, if you know the amount of ammonia, I think I'll type this one in. If you know the amount of ammonia, multiply it by, and what you need to notice here is that if you had 1 mil of ammonia, you could multiply it by 50 to get the amount of water. If you had 2 mils of ammonia, you'd multiply it by 50 to get the amount of water. So that's what this is looking for here on D. If you know the amount of ammonia, multiply it by 50 to find the amount of water. And then question E. It says complete the table. What are the equivalent ratios shown in the table? Well, this is the same. These are the same terms as in the table above, and I didn't actually even fill out those. I don't remember it asking. I don't remember. I can't even see when it asked you to fill that in, but that doesn't really matter. So we just said on question D that if you know the amount of ammonia, so I'm going to put some terms down here. The top terms are the water, and the bottom terms are the ammonia. If you know the ammonia, you multiply it by 50 to find the water. We just said that. So the first bubble here would be 150. And this one would be easy over here. If you know this is 200, this would be 4. And this middle one right here, some kids might call it tricky. You could just go 50 times 3.5. That would work. There's nothing wrong with that strategy. But you could also notice that, do you notice that between 3 and 4, exactly halfway would be 3.5? It's exactly halfway between 3 and 4. Well, this bubble then has to be exactly halfway between 150 and 200. So that's going to be 175. Or like I said, you could just do 50 times 3.5, because we said that if you know the amount of ammonia and you multiply by 50, well, you'll get the amount of water needed. So Those are all filled in, and those would be the same terms that would be in the table above. If you never did that table, you could do it now. I think it's upside down, but that's okay. All right, so reflect, kind of summarize what we talked about here. Reflect number 1 says, look for a pattern. When the amount of ammonia increases by 1, the amount of distilled water increases by, we already described that earlier, 50. So 6 milliliters of ammonia requires blank milliliters of water. Well, we could use our table and just extend it. We could extend our deal here and just put a 6 right here, and we could just notice that the top terms are increasing by 50. So we just add 50 to 250, or we could just do 50 times 6, and I can do that mentally, because 5 times 6 is 30, so therefore annex another 0 makes it 300.